Welcome back to the studio at Azimuth Podcast. I'm Barrett McNabb, and with me is Kimberly McNabb. So a movie we're definitely going to be reviewing soon by Angel Studios. It's the same company that brought Sound of Freedom, which we both really enjoyed. But it's going to be Sound of Hope, where all 22 families in a small Texas town, the church, they adopted 77 local foster children.
Well, I would say these days that could be quite difficult for a church to do that. In April, the Biden administration's Department of Human Health Services enacted safe, appropriate foster care placement requirements, which are set to take effect in 2026. Conservative commentators are concerned that this will require foster families to honor children's gender identity. While this does not include language requiring families to give minors puberty blockers and surgery.
Thank God.
Yeah, but one can conclude that it's not a big stretch because the language does provide a supportive environment.
I can't believe that. But the administration claims it's doing this because 30% of foster kids identify as LGBTQ+, and 5 times more likely to be trans. And I would really want to get to the root cause of why that would be. I mean, we've talked about in the past that there is just this exponential growth of LGBTQ and trans, people that are identifying as that, much more than any past generation. Which leads me to is it a genetic defect that's happening, or is it just social media that's making it the cool thing to do? But I'm thinking it's the latter.
Well, yes. I mean, just think about when we were teenagers and all the things that we did or say or even wore, the hairstyles that we had back in the 80s and 90s, that there's no way we'd do that. But because everyone else around us was doing it, we thought it was a cool thing to do. And anybody who really wants to get to the truth and like the sheer facts behind this should read Miriam Grossman's Lost in Translation book, as well as Abigail Schreier's Irreversible Damage and Bad Therapy. And just, that the latter one talks about how the therapists are, while they should be teaching children positive behavioral things, like, okay, you find yourself in this situation, just take deep breaths kind of thing, or getting to the root cause of why they're in distress. They may have ADD, they may be bipolar. No, they're just labeling everyone as with the same prescription of being trans. I mean,
that's
it's
crazy.
Just mental laziness. It's corrupt. I mean, it's just wrong. But back to the foster kids individually, I would say that, they suffer from abuse and neglect, and those things can cause mental illness. I mean, children are meant to be in steady environments. Every therapist will say that, will agree to that, and a stable life and even routine and structure. They respond best to those things. And when you're in the foster care system, you don't have those things. Now, case in point, the movie Sound of Hope does make mention of a child that was abused and then thought and acted like a cat. So showing, these environments can cause mental breakdowns.
Now it's kind of like the furries thing that we were talking about
Yes.
a few episodes ago. Okay.
Yes. And Texas CASA Mental Health Task Force website says that foster kids are 30%, same percentage, more likely to be mentally ill. So same percentage as LGBTQ.
Okay.
Also, most kids end up in foster care because of neglect, whereas most people think it's just strictly abuse. And parents don't just neglect kids from food, but also guidance and attention. If you just throw them an iPad or a computer, so you're not attentively there, they can go and do all sorts of things. They can get on all sorts of websites, and I'm willing to bet they're not looking up Einstein's theories on physics either.
And they're probably getting into online chats, whether it's an app that's dedicated to that or playing a video game that has an in-game chat feature.
Or even porn. I mean, who knows what they're getting into. So when you introduce an idea that will get them all the intention and praise and a sense of empowerment that they are promoting on some of these online chats and websites, the community gives them all this praise and attention and a sense of empowerment, and, from changing their pronouns and whatnot. I mean, how can kids that have been neglected their entire lives from the foster care system resist?
Yeah, I can see that, as you're looking at positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, and things like that, acting out or declaring that you're the acronym, you're going to get a lot of
attention,
attention.
Yeah. Whereas you go to these same people and say, "Oh, I picked up a Bible today," you're not.
Right.
You're going to get the same type of attention. And kids, these kids are also more likely to be LGBTQ because it is, like we were just saying, a social contagion.
Right.
And, foster homes also typically tend to house more than just one or two children. So if they see one kid getting praise and attention from coming out or changing their pronouns, I mean, again, how are they supposed to resist it?
Yeah, I can only, it's peer pressure. So it could be pressure as well. But then again, it's that positive reinforcement where you're looking at something and saying, that person's getting a lot of attention. Maybe I could do that as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that goes back to basic human behavior, whether
Sure.
you're talking about a toddler or whatnot. People are going to respond to those incentive structures.
Well, conservatives are concerned that foster families will not be licensed or will have their licenses taken away if they do not sign that they will be supportive.
Yeah.
I see this as hugely problematic.
Right. Well, I did look at some of the language in these requirements, and what I read is that the rule does not require any provider to become a designated placement,
Okay.
and specifies that nothing in the rule should be construed as requiring or authorizing a state to penalize a provider that does not seek or is determined not to qualify as a designated placement.
Well, again, the problem, even before this, is that there have always been cases of foster families being denied licenses or having pre-existing long-term status being removed. I can plainly see that in instances where there was a lot of hubbub going around with Christian families or Catholic families being denied an opportunity to adopt and or foster children. But Tulsi Gabbard wrote in her book about an already approved foster family having their rights removed in Vermont, and it's already asked specifically if you'll take kids to gay pride parades. In Oregon, the state already required a signature to have a license at all that said you're going to do those type of activities. And so, that just seems like, one, it's a forcing function to deliberately expose young children to LGBTQ events. I mean, let's just say that that they had no interest, but you've signed a piece of paper that says you're going to take them anyway. Something I've always noticed. It's interesting how libraries have children's reading hour drag queen events, but for some reason they don't have senior citizen library drag queen events. Why is it always geared towards the children?
I would say the senior citizens are far more lonely and appreciative for people to come visit them as well.
Right. Yeah.
What's the agenda, right? So the real problem is how it would be executed, these requirements, and I can see that eventually leading to a federal level that if one does not do pronouns, even here in Texas, we could have the natural born children taken away. And this has already happened in Indiana where parents wouldn't do the pronoun thing for their own child,
right,
and the child was taken away.
Yeah, I cannot believe that we are evolving into the thought police. I mean, it has been happening slowly, but it is steady. And to have the thought police come in and say, you are not using the correct pronouns, therefore you're a bad parent, that's just, it blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind. But again, we're hammering at an issue where the majority is being harmed, what really is just a small minority of the population that this is. I mean, I got it. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, but still, we're talking about, as far as the population of the United States, and if it's even smaller, if you look at the population of the world, that we're spending all this time and energy after an extremely small minority of Americans. But look, if you're required to take the kids to parades, you're essentially participating in the indoctrination of what might not have occurred, a hard life to begin with. I mean, I see forcing children to go to things that they may not want to go to, but signing a pledge in order to be a foster parent, that's just rewarding failure, in my opinion. I mean, when really you should be supporting success. But there's already way too foster families available, but now they're removing the greatest source, religious families.
Yeah, I mean, according to Barna research, religious Christians are twice more likely than the average American to adopt, and evangelicals are 5 times more likely than the average American to adopt. And that is especially true for older children and those with disabilities. And, it's not just, promoting Christianity. Like, their churches help not just in figuring out the process of adopting children, but also in raising them, including homework assistance.
Yeah, since religious Christians are more likely to refuse to sign on to be a designated placement, the foster care system, a lot of these states are going to dictate their own systems until there is eventually probably a federal guidelines that are put out. But again, they're funded by the federal government, so oftentimes there are little trinkets that are dangled, or sticks that are wielded.
Your federal funding.
Yeah, and the Department of Human Health Services is funding these, and so they're able to not necessarily pass laws, but give guidance, and that guidance could be, you're not getting federal dollars unless you follow our guidance. Well, it's not a law. It's just that we have the ability to redirect funding.
Exactly. Well, some of you may be able to guess who pushed these requirements. The Admiral himself, bureaucrat, swamp rat himself, Rachel Levine.
Yeah, that was the Babylon Bee's Man of the Year 2 years ago.
Who apparently is too radical, not just for the state of Alabama, which has a ban on puberty blockers and surgeries for minors, but for WPATH, of all people, groups of people who are specifically named in Miriam Grossman's Lost in Translation book.
Yeah, according to the New York Post, the international group capitulated and removed the text in violation of its own process, despite preference of its own committee members to retain the age limits after the pressure campaign. This is absolutely just mind-blowing that even WPATH's guidance recommended age minimums, finally, age minimums, 14 for hormone replacement, 15 for mastectomies, 16 for breast augmentation, and 17 for genital surgeries. I think all of these ages are ridiculous. It should be, I believe, like 25 when your frontal cortex is fully formed for you to figure that stuff out. But this is going from no restrictions to finally putting down some age restrictions.
Well, WPATH's 8th edition of Standards of Care, released in September 22, had no age minimums for transgender procedures. The thing I noticed was to get breast augmentation is older than replacing them at all.
Right.
Or removing them entirely. I'm like, you can always get fake ones taken out if you change your mind later, but you can't have real ones put back in. So if anything, it should be the reverse. That's so ridiculous. I mean, it's just.
But Levine did some backdoor. He furious that these age limits got put down, and did some backdoor channels in order to admonish the WPATH to change it, that there shouldn't be any ages whatsoever And so it's amazing that a far left organization like that finally recognized some medical science and did put some age guidelines in there. I still think they're way too young, but Levine was trying to get them to rescind that and get rid of the ages altogether again.
The funny thing is, he has been quoted, and Fox News, I'm ashamed of you referring to him as she. How dare you? But anyway, Levine is a pediatrician and taught pediatrics and psychiatry. You're like sunk into this mental madness, and it just shows you that no matter how educated you are, you can fall victim to this craziness. And he went to Hebrew school where they study the Talmud, and I've never read it, but I've heard so many people quote, stories and teachings from the Talmud, and they're so wise. And so again, just proof that the most educated people can fall victim to ridiculousness.
Well, I mean, here's a problem that I have with it. Okay, so Levine is a biological male, and he was happy that he did not transition early because of his kids. So he got to have a family, got to have procreate and have children, but yet he doesn't want your kids to have kids because he wants to transition them before they can go through puberty, before they can, intelligently have a family. And I think that is wrong. That's just
Absolutely.
wrong.
It's very hypocritical.
Absolutely.
And for all the people that want to, slam labels, oh, you're a bigot, you're a transphobe, blah, blah, blah. I'm pretty sure I've told the story about how I used to get electrolysis and the person doing it on my face for hours at a time was a transgender person. Before this was politicized, if I were truly a transphobe, I would not let them near my face and pay them money to do it.
Right.
And have very deep conversations with this person. And, all the people are like, oh, would you rather have a dead daughter than a trans son, blah, blah. No. The National Library of Medicine has on it that studies conclude people who underwent gender affirming, quote unquote, surgery had a 12-fold higher suicide attempt risk compared to those who did not. And transgender affirming surgery is significantly associated with elevated suicide attempt risk. So, sorry, spare me the labels.
Yeah, I don't think by doing this you're helping at all. In fact, I think obviously children
it's just to
need
blackmail
to be
parents.
Yeah, it's just to blackmail parents, and it's to deliberately exclude a group of potential foster parents that are on the by and by majority religious, right?
Yep.
And majority Christian. And so it is a deliberate attempt to exclude that population from helping some of our children that are at greatest risk.
Yes. I mean, you're hurting the most vulnerable people, which is all foster care children. You're removing your greatest resource. It's like saying, okay, well, we need ditch diggers. We're going to remove all the muscular men.
Right.
Like, why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense.
None of this makes any sense, but we saw this and we wanted to bring it to your attention. Please leave comments in the comment section below on what you think is going on in our society, that we're having just this huge influx of trans and LGBTQ population that's just kind of rising its head. Is it because they were just so suppressed for so long, and now that there's rules, they're able to come forward, or is there a biological thing going on where more people are not being, cisgender and male and female? I mean, I want to know. I really do. But we wanted to bring this to you, so thank you for tuning into Azimuth Podcast, and please stay tuned after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.